Chapter 1, Dongyi the Drama and the Real Sukbin Choe. In 2010, the Korean historical drama Dongyi aired to widespread popularity where it drew an enthusiastic audience. The story followed a cheerful young woman of low birth who rises through the Joseon court to become the mother of a king. Many viewers came to know her by the drama's name Dongyi. But a drama is a drama. Between the story a writer fills with imagination and the facts recorded in the Silic, the official royal annals, there is always a gap. The Sukbin Choe recorded in the Silic looks considerably different from the character on screen. By any measure, she achieved one of the most remarkable reversals of fortune in Joseon history. Born into poverty, she entered the palace as a girl, caught the eye of the king, bore him, a son who became one of Joseon's longest-reigning monarchs, and held the highest rank available to a royal concubine until the day she died. In terms of outcome, she won. But the historical record also contains other things: the denunciation that ended a rival's life, the changes in the king that followed, the walls of the social order that her son could not fully breach even as a prince, and the quiet work he did for his mother after he became king. This is the story the Silic records, not drama history. Chapter 2, Born Low, Entering the Palace, 1693. Sukbin Choe was born in 1670 in a western district of the capital. Her father was a low-ranking military official. She lost both parents young. The memorial stone her son later erected records that she entered the palace at the age of 7. But exactly what role she held remains a matter of historical debate. Her precise status on entering the palace is contested. She is commonly described as a musuri, a cleaning woman who did not hold formal court lady status, but some historians argue she entered as a court lady who handled bedchamber duties. What is confirmed, King Yeongjo spent his reign struggling with his mother's social origins. The exact entry status has not been definitively resolved. What was a musuri? If a court lady Gungyo held formal rank within the inner court hierarchy, a musuri was of even lower status, someone who served the court ladies themselves, helping with washing, cleaning, and minor errands. For such a woman to catch the eye of the king was, in practical terms, nearly impossible. How she first attracted Sukjong's attention is not recorded. History is silent on that moment. A woman of her standing encountering the king was not something anyone thought to document. What is clear, she entered at low rank, spent years in the palace without attracting royal notice, and then, in 1693, everything changed. Sukjong was 32. Sukbin Choe was 23. She received the king's favor and became pregnant. She gave birth to a son, Yeongsu, who died 2 months later. But she had entered the king's orbit. And for the woman who was then queen, Jang Heebin, this made Sukbin Choe a threat. Sukbin Choe, born December 17, 1670, died April 9, 1718, age 49. She was 9 years younger than Sukjong, born 1661 and died 2 years before him. Chapter 3, Rivalry, Political Upheaval, and Rising Status, 1693-1699. Jang Heebin's brother reportedly arranged an attempt to poison Sukbin Choe. It failed and drew the king closer to Sukbin Choe rather than away from her. To understand what followed, the political landscape of Sukjong's reign must be understood. His era was defined by Hwanguk's sudden reversals of power, in which the ruling faction was swept out and replaced by its rivals in a single royal decision. Sukjong used this mechanism deliberately, ensuring no single faction ever held enough power to challenge the throne. In the process, many people died or went into exile. In 1694, the Gapsul Hwanguk reversed the existing order. The Southerners fell. The Westerners were restored. Jang Heebin was demoted back to the rank of royal concubine. That same year in September, Sukbin Choe gave birth to her second son, the boy who would become King Yeongjo. Sukjong elevated her rank. Her advancement continued rapidly. In 1695, she reached Sukbin, the highest rank available to a royal concubine. A woman who had entered the palace at the lowest level had reached the top of the available hierarchy. But the tensions within the palace did not ease. Queen Inhyeon's health was declining, and Jang Heebin, confined to her quarters and stripped of her former status, was quietly doing something. Chapter 4, The Death of Queen Inhyeon and the Denunciation, 1701. On August 14, 1701, Queen Inhyeon died. She was 34 years old. She had never fully recovered her health after her years of exile, and after 7 years of slow decline following her reinstatement, she was gone. The court was immediately destabilized. Among the remaining royal concubines, Jang Heebin held the highest historical status and had given the king his crown prince. Voices arose particularly from the Soron faction calling for her restoration to the position of queen. For the Noron faction, this was unacceptable. For Sukbin Choe, it was catastrophic. If Jang Heebin was restored as queen, her son, the crown prince, would be legitimate heir apparent, and the future of Sukbin Choe's son, Yeongun, became uncertain at best. In September 1701, Sukbin Choe went privately to the king. She told him that Jang Heebin had secretly erected a spirit shrine in the western quarters of the Chuisendong Hall and had been conducting rituals to curse Queen Inhyeon to death. The Seonjo records Sukbin Choe secretly informed the king. Simultaneously, Queen Inhyeon's brother Min Jinhu reported that the queen had told him before her death that her illness seemed strange. The spirit shrine was confirmed to exist. Whether it was intended to curse the queen or was a prayer for the crown prince's health remains debated to this day. Sukjong moved immediately. Those connected with Jang Heebin were executed. On October 10, 1701, the order was issued for Jang Heebin to take poison. The Silic records the scene. The crown prince, 14-year-old Yi, in the future King Yeongjo, rushed to the Soron premiere and begged for his mother's life. One official responded with sympathy. Another looked away from the prince, clutching at his robes. The decision was not reversed. Jang Heebin died by poison. Sukbin Choe's denunciation had been the decisive trigger. History leaves a question unanswered. Was Sukbin Choe's denunciation the truth, a survival strategy, or both? The Silic does not answer. It records only the outcome. Chapter 5, After the Denunciation, The King's Changing Manner, 1701-1716. After Jang Heebin's death, the historical record shows a shift in Sukjong's treatment of Sukbin Choe. That same year, Sukjong formalized a prohibition a royal concubine could not be elevated to the position of queen. On the surface, the rule prevented a recurrence of what had happened with Jang Heebin, but it applied equally to Sukbin Choe. Whatever her son might become, she herself could not be made queen. In the years that followed, Sukjong did not seek out Sukbin Choe as he once had. The record does not state why. Those who have studied the period offer an interpretation. Sukjong had loved Jang Heebin. He had elevated her to queen, then demoted her, then had her killed, and the person most directly associated with that final outcome was Sukbin Choe. Whether he felt regret, discomfort, or something else entirely, the emotional distance that followed was real. Sukjong was, in many ways, a complicated figure, brilliant and calculating in his use of factional politics, capable of great affection and equally capable of absolute coldness. The man who used the Hwanguk system to keep all factions off balance was the same man who elevated a lowborn concubine to queen and then had her executed. What he made of his own decisions in the years after 1701 is not recorded. The distance from Sukbin Choe may be one clue. In 1716, Sukbin Choe became ill. Sukjong ordered her to leave the palace and recover at a private residence. She spent 3 years outside the palace walls. Gojung Jue, the narrative that Sukbin Choe was expelled from the palace after falling out of favor, appears to be based on a misreading of the historical record. Both the Silic and King Yeongjo's memorial texts state clearly that she left on medical orders and returned to the palace whenever her condition allowed. During those 3 years, the record notes that she continued to worry about the king's health and the affairs of the court. Her body was outside the walls. Her attention remained inside them. Chapter 6, The Wall That Would Not Move. Joseon was a society ordered by hierarchy. The son born to the queen was the legitimate heir. The son born to a concubine was a prince, but of secondary rank, lower in the line of succession, lower in the ceremonial order, and carrying the social weight of his mother's origins throughout his life. Yeongun was a prince, but the prince born of a woman who had entered the palace as a musuri. That origin followed him. Long after he became king, long after he had ruled for decades, the circumstances of his birth remained a source of political vulnerability and personal pain. When Sukbin Choe died in 1718, her son had to conduct her funeral under the constraints that governed a prince of his status. Joseon mourning practice required that a son born of a concubine could not dishevel his hair in the traditional gesture of grief. He could not wear the full mourning garment reserved for a parent's death. His period of mourning had to be shorter. Yeongun did it anyway. He wore the mourning robes he was not supposed to wear. He performed the rites in full. Sukjong reprimanded his son. Finding a burial site for Sukbin Choe was also a struggle. Sukjong rejected 2 proposed locations. Yeongun had to hire a geomancer personally and search for a site. The location he found in Paju, Gyeonggi Province, is now known as Soryong-won. None of this would have been necessary if his mother had been the queen. The son knew it, and when he became king, he set about changing what could be changed after the fact through the instruments available to him. Chapter 7, The Death 1718. On April 9, 1718, Sukbin Choe died at her private residence in Cheongdong. She was 49 years old. She died 2 years before Sukjong. The palace sent officials to offer condolences. The gifts were notably generous. The ceremony acknowledged her. But the funeral proceeded within the bounds that her rank allowed no more than that. Inhyeon conducted the mourning that a son conducts. Then, under the rules governing his status, he was required to set that mourning aside and resume his duties as a prince. He had done what he could. The rest would wait until he was king. 6 years later he was. Chapter 8. What the son did after becoming king. In 1724, Inhyeon succeeded to the throne as King Yeongjo. He was 31 years old and he reigned for 52 years. In the first year of his reign, he built a shrine for his mother, Sukbin Choe. It was renamed Yuksangmyo, then elevated to Yuksangung, a status designation normally reserved for shrines of crown princes and their consorts. Yeongjo extended it to his mother. Her tomb was similarly elevated from Soryeongmyo to Soryeongwon, and she received the posthumous title Hwagyong. This work of posthumous recognition continued throughout his reign. Title by title, ceremony by ceremony, he restored to his mother what her circumstances had prevented her from receiving while she lived. The weight behind that sustained effort is visible in the record of his reign. Yeongjo's origins were used against him politically his entire life. Twice during the reign of his predecessor, King Yeongjo, there were attempts on his life grounded in the argument that a musuri's son had no legitimate claim to the throne. He survived, but the vulnerability never fully disappeared. The depth of his response to that vulnerability extended to his relationship with his own son, Crown Prince Sado, whose story ended in a wooden rice chest in 1762. The pressure Yeongjo placed on his son to be beyond reproach, the exacting standard he held him to, had roots that reached back to his own origins and the need to prove, again and again, that his line deserved the throne. Sukbin Choe did not fall. She rose and she held the position she reached. She made her son a king. But the Silic records the shape of that achievement, the choices made, the consequences that followed, and the long work her son carried out alone after she was gone to give her what she could not receive while she lived. History records it plainly. The rest is in the reading.